The air was thicker than breath, the kind that clings to your skin like memory. Even before the first growl, the jungle was already speaking, through the hum of insects, the ripple of black water, and the soft mechanical pulse of the heartbeat monitor strapped to my wrist. That sound was my tether. Steady, human, predictable. Everything else around us felt borrowed from another world. We'd been dropped 2 clicks south of the Javari River, tasked to retrieve what command called missing personnel. But the air smelled wrong, like ozone and rot. Our boots sank into mud that moved. It wasn't fear that caught me first, but silence. The jungle has its rhythm, its arguments between frogs and cicadas. Yet suddenly there was nothing. Silence pressed against the eardrums until one of the men whispered, "It's listening." I logged the time, 21:47, and the coordinates. Procedure against panic. Delta works in absolutes. You measure, you record, you move. Yet each breath felt borrowed, like the forest had started counting us. Then came the sound, low, almost polite at first. A growl you felt more than heard, rolling through the ribs. The kind that doesn't echo, because it comes from everywhere at once. The others raised weapons. I raised the recorder. If something wanted to announce itself, I wanted proof. The lens caught nothing but heat haze, though the growl deepened, bending air. My monitor beeped in time with my pulse, an accidental duet of man and machine against something unseen. Then it stopped. Not the growl, not the breath, the heartbeat. One blink, one gap, a flat tone before it resumed. Just long enough to remind me that even the instruments weren't immune. By dawn, the trees looked the same, but nothing else did. The jungle had spoken once. It wouldn't need to raise its voice again. By dawn, the mist rolled low across the clearing, blurring the shapes of men who no longer trusted the mission or each other. The debrief tent smelled of fuel and damp nylon. Command's transmission came through a tight band encrypted feed. Voice filtered to static calm. Extraction of lost scientists, they said. But their tone carried the kind of distance that meant we were already expendable. They outlined coordinates, a window of 72 hours, and a silence clause that didn't fit a rescue op. I marked everything. Grid refs, timestamps, call signs, because procedure is the only thing you can hold when truth starts slipping. Obedience versus suspicion, that was the real battlefield. We followed orders because it's what kept the blood warm. But I could feel the lie coiling under each instruction like a tripwire. A second chopper appeared on the manifest, unmarked, no serial, no flight record from base. When I asked about it, Command said it was a backup insertion for medical extraction. Yet no medic was listed. I logged the discrepancy under unverified assets. Time stamped 9:13. Small frictions like that don't seem like much in daylight, but they become louder in hindsight. We cleaned our rifles, rechecked comms, pretended the jungle's silence wasn't still inside us. One of the men, Lopez, laughed too loudly, saying it was probably cartel biolabs or eco-terror junk. I wanted to believe him, but the tone in Command's voice didn't sound like bureaucracy. It sounded like guilt rehearsed. That night I watched the flight logs again, line by line. The second chopper's route vanished halfway across the grid, its beacon blinking out over a place marked Sector 9, Restricted Biological Zone. Nobody briefed us on that. Nobody ever would. The next morning, the same calm voice told us to move. No explanation, just coordinates and silence. Orders are supposed to bring clarity, but these only deepened the dark. The river looked calm, but it wasn't water. It was memory. Every ripple carried the echo of something moving beneath. We moved single file through knee-deep current, rifles angled up, eyes sweeping the tree line. The humidity pressed down like a hand. Even the insects seemed to know when to shut up. By the 3rd kilometer, our radios were useless. The signal bars froze, then blinked out entirely. I switched to manual log entries, time, direction, weather. Each detail a way to stay anchored. Delta trains you to trust your data when instinct fails. But in that silence, instinct was the only thing still talking. Discipline versus primal instinct. That's the line we walked, and it was getting thinner. We found what was left of the scientist's gear near a sandbar, shredded packs, a cracked lens, a tablet full of corrupted files. no bodies. The footprints leading away were human until they weren't. Midstream, they ended like someone had stepped into thin air. One of the men cursed, trying to laugh it off, but the sound broke halfway through. The jungle returned the echo of that laugh a few seconds later. Not perfectly, slightly distorted, like the voice of someone remembering how to be human. We froze. The only sound after that was the heartbeat monitor on my wrist, steady and mechanical, a reminder that one of us was still measurable. We established a temporary perimeter on a gravel rise. The air smelled metallic, like blood on battery terminals. Lopez whispered, "The jungle sees before it kills." It wasn't superstition. It was observation. The canopy above us shifted with no wind. Something was moving, just outside geometry. I tried to keep my voice calm in the log entry. Possible predator activity, unknown origin. Refrain from engagement until visual confirmation. My own pulse was syncing with the beeps, faster, louder, until it sounded less like a heartbeat and more like a countdown. Night came without sunset, just the color draining from the world. The river kept whispering, carrying echoes that didn't belong to us. We'd crossed the line between reconnaissance and myth, and still, we kept walking. By the time we set camp, fear had shape and temperature. It moved between us like mist, clinging to breath and fabric. But procedure doesn't bend for emotion. It refines it. I opened the SATCOM, recalibrated the antenna, and pinged coordinates every 10 minutes. Each failed transmission was a reminder that control still mattered, even if connection didn't. We drew a perimeter, 30 meters, 4 motion sensors, 1 infrared trip line. Every man had an assigned sector, every task a timestamp. Fear thrives in gaps, structure erases them. Chaos versus control. That's how you stay human in places that test the definition. Lopez murmured about the noise he'd heard downstream. I told him to log it, not name it. Naming gives power, recording gives distance. My calm wasn't courage, it was math. The more numbers I wrote down, the less room there was for imagination. When we ran drills, the jungle seemed to watch, silent but alert. The sensors blinked in rhythm with the heartbeat monitor on my wrist, a small mechanical pulse against the breathing dark. Procedure had become prayer. Even the way we cleaned our rifles felt like ritual, oil and cloth against corrosion and chaos. At 2,300 hours, the stillness grew too loud. No frogs, no wind, just the slow pulse of electronics and nerves. I found myself whispering into the recorder, not for command this time, but for whoever might one day need proof that sanity can sound calm. "We are stable," I said. "We are still here." Then, quieter, almost to myself. "Ever face something logic couldn't brief you for?" The question hung in the air, swallowed by humidity. I didn't expect an answer. Some truths don't echo, they absorb. By midnight, the instruments were steady, the team breathing in unison. The jungle seemed to accept the order we imposed. For now, but under every measured breath, something waited, listening for when we'd lose count. It happened so fast that silence came before the sound. 1 second, the night was still, humid air, blinking monitors, the faint buzz of mosquitoes. The next, the tree line split open with movement too fast for form. My hand was already on the trigger, but instinct lagged behind whatever physics just rewrote itself in front of us. One of ours, Reed, was gone before his name left anyone's mouth. No scream, no drag marks, just torn webbing where his harness had been. The jungle gave nothing back but the smell of iron. We swept the perimeter, thermals up, rifles scanning arcs of ghost heat. The sensor grid flickered, shadows where temperature should have been, shapes without signature. Man versus unknown. I logged everything. 112 hours. Location grid Delta, 9. Missing operative Reed. The act of writing steadied me. Facts were the only weapon left when reason started retreating. I tagged and encrypted the footage from the motion cams, proof that something beyond biology had moved among us. Those files were receipts of sanity, my way of saying. I saw it, and it saw me. Lopez broke formation, shouting Reed's name into the dark. I grabbed his shoulder, whispering, "Noise attracts pattern." He froze. We listened. The jungle responded, not with an echo, but with mimicry. Our own words came back, half a second delayed, lower in pitch. Whatever it was, it had learned to speak through the trees. I replayed the thermal feed. For one frame, just one, a shape appeared beside Reed's last position. Humanoid outline, but hollow inside, like the heat had been inverted, then static. The file corrupted itself, as if the system had refused to believe what it recorded. Command had taught us to measure threat in range, weapon, or intent. This one didn't fit. It wasn't attacking for advantage. It was sampling, testing how we broke. Every time I closed my eyes, I could still feel that fraction of a heartbeat missing when it struck. I encrypted the footage twice and backed it onto a separate drive labeled Reed, Incident, Alpha 1, MP4. Maybe one day, someone would believe what the jungle already knew. For now, all I could do was listen to the heartbeat monitor resume its steady rhythm, machine against myth. Somewhere beyond the trees, something listened back. By dawn, the jungle had grown too quiet, an unnatural, compressing quiet that felt less like peace and more like pressure. Birds didn't call. Even the wind refused to move through the leaves. I've been in war zones where silence meant safety. Here, it meant something was listening. We recovered Reed's tracker, half melted, as if the metal had been digested by air. No blood, no remains, no struggle. Just that one beacon, blinking through a static-filled signal. Lopez tried to radio base, but every frequency collapsed into white noise. For a moment, buried inside the static, I swore I heard our own voices screaming back. Words none of us had spoken yet. Present versus echo. I ordered a tactical regroup. Circular formation, 10-meter spread, full sensory scan. The data didn't match physics. Infrared showed voids, cold zones shaped like human torsos, standing motionless between trees. The temperature dropped 5 degrees in less than a minute, though no weather front had moved. Sykes muttered a prayer. The men laughed, too loud, too forced. Fear hides in volume sometimes. But when the laughter stopped, something laughed back, a low, mirrored tone from the canopy. No source, no direction. The mimicry had evolved. I started recording voice logs then, time-stamped evidence, one every hour. Each entry ended with a reminder. Jungle interference persists. Maintain composure. Document everything. Those recordings became my only proof of reality, each word a tether against unraveling. At 0300, Lopez vanished mid-watch. One moment he was whispering about home. The next, his comm crackled, replaying his final sentence backward. We found his boots 15 feet up, embedded in tree bark as if gravity had decided to reverse itself for him alone. Command protocols said extraction required confirmation of a known threat. But how do you define what can erase sound itself? I filed the second encrypted log, unheard, incident, Bravo 2, MP4, and added my own note. The enemy is not visible, but it hears everything. We set up perimeter flares. When I closed my eyes, I could still hear Lopez whispering from somewhere beyond the firelight, calling us by name, but his tone was wrong, stretched like tape warped by heat. In Delta Force, we learned how to fight insurgents, terrorists, men. But this was a mirror that screamed only when we stopped talking, and I was beginning to understand. In this jungle, sound wasn't communication, it was invitation. By sunrise, our comms console displayed a single frozen frame, the last transmission from command. A static logo, blurred text, and then silence. The feed had gone dark, no acknowledgement, no fallback frequency, no emergency ping. In Delta, silence from HQ isn't a glitch, it's intent. Lopez was gone, Reed was gone, and now command followed. I initiated a systems diagnostic, triple-checking uplink relays, satellite handshake, and signal bounce through the low-orbit node. Everything read as normal, but the signal strength flickered in a pattern. 3 long pulses, 2 short. Morse code for stay still. Someone on the other end was alive and hiding. Sykes thought it was sabotage. He wasn't wrong. The metadata from our previous transmissions showed unusual packet compression, data rerouted through an unregistered relay, located deep within the same grid we were operating in. In simple terms, command wasn't missing. It was here, somewhere inside the zone. I replayed the mission brief, line by line, frame by frame. A timestamp anomaly caught my eye. The file had been modified 17 minutes after we took off from forward base. Embedded in its header was an alternate call sign. Chopper 2. A second bird that never arrived, never reported, never existed in the official flight log. That was when it hit me. The extraction of lost scientists wasn't a recovery, it was containment. And we were the disposable firewall. To verify, I cracked open the mission uplink's route directory. Inside the encrypted traffic logs, I found fragments of voice directives masked as signal noise. Filters revealed a whisper buried beneath the static. Delta team compromised. Begin phase removal. I didn't tell the others. Not yet. Information is power, but it's also poison when morale's already bleeding out. Instead, I shifted our comm protocols to manual routing, bypassing central relay. If command wanted silence, they'd have to fight for it. Before shutting down the console, I noticed one last anomaly. The system clock was off by exactly 23 minutes, the same delay we'd logged when the jungle swallowed our signal 2 nights ago. Either command had lost sync with time, or something was rewriting it in real time. I wrote the next report in total radio silence. The only sound was my heartbeat. It pulsed steady, measured, human, until it wasn't. At 0600 hours, I sent our 5th evac request. Standard procedure, coded with full threat verification and grid coordinates. The response came faster than protocol allowed. Too fast, almost waiting for us. 3 words, cold and final. Asset contaminated. Hold position. No explanation, no follow-up. Just that phrase echoing through static like a verdict. The team gathered around the comms rig, faces washed in the pale glow of the monitor. Sykes slammed his fist against the casing. They left us, he said, but I knew better. They hadn't left us. We'd served our purpose. Protocol dictated that a contamination code meant biological exposure, quarantine until verification. But we hadn't come in contact with any pathogen, at least not one science had a name for. The real message wasn't about infection, it was about control. I switched to secondary frequencies, cross-checking the transmission origin. It didn't route from Command Central or any recognized relay. It came from inside the same operational grid, a mobile uplink, roughly 2 clicks northeast. Someone within our perimeter had sent it. Someone watching. I opened the sealed mission archive we'd received at briefing. The encrypted header, once unreadable, had changed. Inside was a hidden memo dated 3 days before deployment. Subject: Containment Operation Delta. Black. Objective: Isolate field team post-contact. Prevent egress. Note: Ensure plausible loss event. No retrieval authorized. They didn't send us to rescue the scientists. We were the scientists' replacements. Expendable, field-tested observers meant to erase what the original team had unleashed. Sykes wanted to move. "We can't hold this ground," he said, voice shaking under control. "We're sitting ducks." He was right. But command denial meant any outbound flight risked interception. I authorized a silent fallback maneuver, setting up 3 dummy beacons transmitting false coordinates while we packed essentials. Still, part of me needed proof, something tangible to expose what this mission really was. I initiated my personal contingency plan, Protocol 96, a 96-hour no-contact recording cycle that activates when command cuts link. Every breath, every order, every anomaly would be logged and time-stamped. It wasn't survival I cared about anymore. It was evidence. When night fell, the jungle answered with a new sound. Rotors. We looked up, hearts in our throats. But it wasn't extraction. It was the other chopper, the one from the modified flight log, hovering soundless above the canopy, lights off. No insignia, no response to hails. Then it vanished, like smoke drawn into darkness. That was when I knew. Extraction wasn't denied. It was never meant to happen. By dawn, the jungle was too quiet. Even the insects had stopped. We picked a clearing beside a narrow tributary, thick canopy overhead. One exit route mapped by compass, not GPS. The devices blinked, but refused to orient. Every signal we sent came back scrambled, like the air itself was encrypting our thoughts. We called it the dead zone, Sykes and Ramos started building perimeters while I logged the coordinates manually. The routine helped, something solid in a place that refused to obey. We set motion triggers around the camp, each linked to UV trip beams powered by field batteries. The decoy system used thermal dummies, canvas sacks filled with warm river water, to mimic body heat. If the creature hunted by sight, we'd fool it. If it hunted by rhythm, we'd give it noise. By midday, sweat had soaked through my uniform. The air tasted metallic, like stormwater mixed with blood. I ran diagnostics on the field monitor, our last functioning piece of tech, and saw the old heartbeat signal flickering again. A slow pulse, irregular. It wasn't ours. I told the team it was interference, but inside, I knew better. That mechanical rhythm had become a language between us and whatever shared this jungle. It answered when we pushed too deep, faded when we fell silent. We tested response patterns. 1 UV flash, 1 pulse on the monitor, 2 flashes, nothing. 3, and the pulse slowed, syncing almost perfectly with human rest rate. The jungle was listening. At night, we ate in shifts, silent, except for the distant hum of the generator. Each of us had changed, voices lower, movements smaller, instinctively matching the jungle's rhythm. Even Sykes, once loud, now spoke in whispers. "Feels like it's learning us," he said. He wasn't wrong. Our first trap triggered at 0220. No movement on thermal, no sound, but the tripwire snapped clean. The decoy, 10 meters out, was gone. The field monitor flickered again. 1 slow heartbeat. Ramos swore it was close, said he felt air move against his neck, not wind, but breath. We rotated positions, lights off, rifles angled. No one fired. The creature never showed, yet by morning, 2 motion sensors had been uprooted and stacked neatly in the shape of a triangle, a message or a warning. Before rest cycle, I left a single line in my log. The jungle doesn't kill without reason. It studies first. If you've ever had to fight an invisible enemy, you'll understand this next part. The fear isn't in losing sight of it. It's in realizing it never lost sight of you. The decision came quietly, the way most bad ones do. By the 3rd night in the dead zone, time and logic had both begun to blur. Command was silent. Extraction was a lie. The jungle felt alive, watching, breathing, waiting. So I built a plan, not to win, but to understand. We'd turn the hunter into prey. I drafted the outline like a mission log, precise, stripped of emotion. Phase 1. Establish lure field with thermal decoys spaced 10 meters apart. Phase 2. Deploy slow. Burning magnesium flares calibrated to human body temperature. Phase 3. Sync every monitor to pulse at 60 beats per minute. A steady rhythm. Human. Predictable. I wanted it to think we were predictable. The men followed without question. In silence, they carried the decoys into the brush, burying them in shallow pits, wires snaking back toward the control hub. Sweat rolled off helmets and into the mud. No one spoke. The jungle pressed close, thick and unmoving, as if listening. At 2,100 hours, the humidity reached 94%. My shirt clung like another layer of skin. I checked the uplink recorder, running clean, perfectly time-stamped. Then the first flare hissed to life. White light bled through the canopy, painting the trees in a ghostly, unnatural glow. For a second, it felt like we'd turned the forest into a simulation. Our rules, our terrain. That illusion ended when the voice came. "Ramos, check your 6. It was faint, but clear. The tone, the accent, the hesitation. It was Ramos's own voice, playing back through the comms. Only, Ramos was standing right beside me. He froze mid-breath, rifle half raised, eyes scanning shadows that didn't move. "Ramos, it's me," I said quietly. "Comms are dead," he shook his head. "It's saying my name." The voice repeated it, louder this time, closer. Static wrapped around the syllables like wet cloth. It wasn't playback, it was imitation. The jungle was learning to talk. I gave the hand signal, cut comms, switched to gestures. But the mimicry didn't stop. It drifted through the air itself, phrases breaking apart, rebuilding, finding shape. Lopez swore he heard his mother's voice calling from the trees. Then the motion tracker blinked red, movement on all sides, 40 meters out. I triggered the UV grid. Light detonated across the clearing, searing white, almost holy. For one heartbeat, I saw it, an outline bending air, tall and rippling, like heat given form. Then it was gone. Static screamed through the comms, every channel erupting at once. One word looped over the noise, slow and deliberate. Return. Silence followed. No movement. No heat signatures. Only the hiss of dying flares and the sharp, sterile scent of ozone. Later, reviewing the footage, I froze a single frame, distorted, impossible, but real. It wasn't human, but it had learned how to sound like one. The bait had worked, but it wasn't hunting us anymore. It was calling something bigger. We moved before dawn, when the jungle's breath was still heavy with mist. The plan was simple: contain, confirm, extract. No heroics, no chaos. Just proof. The ground was slick, the air metallic. Every sound carried too far. We reset the grid, double-checked the sonic emitters, and armed the magnesium light traps. What we were hunting didn't bleed, but it reacted to sound. So we'd make silence a weapon. At 0430 hours, we went dark. No speech, no radio, only hand signals and the soft rustle of gear. I counted down in my head, matching each number to the pulse in my wrist. 60 beats per minute. Steady, human. The jungle pulsed back, like it had learned the rhythm overnight. I watched the monitors, infrared, thermal, motion. Each screen showed only static interference, the kind that means something's there but not meant to be seen. Then the first sensor tripped, a low-frequency vibration, like pressure shifting through water. Branches bowed, though no wind moved. The trap perimeter held steady for 9 seconds before the grid distorted, air shimmering, edges bending light itself. I hit the trigger. Magnesium flared, white-hot, burning through the fog. Nets deployed from all angles, reinforced Kevlar, waited for mass capture. The sonic pulse fired a half-second later, frequency tuned to disorient any organic nervous system within 10 meters. For a moment, I thought we'd done it. The distortion stilled inside the webbing, shape defined but not visible, like glass bending around a void. Cameras clicked automatically, recording frame by frame, and then the air started to scream. Not sound, not really. Pressure collapsing in on itself. The nets shredded, threads turning to powder midair. My headset crackled with voices, all of them ours, overlapping. Sykes, Ramos, Lopez, all talking at once, though none of them moved their mouths. Each voice repeated the same phrase in perfect unison. You shouldn't have built this. I felt my heartbeat sinking to the pulse emitters. Too fast now, erratic. The monitors spiked red, then flatlined. I ordered immediate fallback, hand signals sharp and calm. We retreated to the secondary perimeter, boots sinking in mud that felt suddenly warm. When the light finally dimmed, all that remained in the clearing was the recorder, a single device still blinking, file saved automatically. Artifact, Delta, Black Box, Avi. I sealed it in a waterproof pouch, stamped the timestamp, 0457 hours. Proof, even if no one would believe it. The team regrouped in silence, faces pale, eyes unfocused. Lopez whispered, "We caught nothing." But I knew better. We caught something we weren't meant to see, and for a moment it caught us too. The air still tasted of burnt metal when we fell back to the perimeter. No one spoke for a full minute. The jungle was quiet again, as if the capture attempt had never happened. Only the faint hiss from the fried emitters reminded us it had. I started cataloging damage. 2 transmitters lost, 1 recorder offline, and 3 soldiers showing signs of disorientation. But the silence carried weight. It wasn't over. Then Sykes broke formation. His breathing turned ragged, rifle trembling in his hands. "It was inside my head," he said, eyes glassy, pupils wide. Lopez reached out to steady him, but the contact sparked panic. Sykes spun, finger on the trigger, screaming something we couldn't understand. The shot cracked through the fog. Lopez fell backward, hitting the mud hard. One bullet to the shoulder. Clean entry, messy exit. Instinct replaced fear. I dropped beside Lopez, cutting his vest open. The blood was dark, almost black in the half-light. I pressed the field dressing, sealed the wound, and tightened the tourniquet until his pulse steadied. My hands moved automatically. Clamp, tie, inject. Morphine, 5 milligrams, intramuscular. Time logged, 0, 5, 1, 6 hours. The medical tablet blinked confirmation. A realism anchor, proof that control still existed somewhere inside the chaos. Sykes collapsed to his knees, shaking. I wanted to hate him, but his eyes looked hollow, lost. Whatever we'd trapped, or tried to, had reached into him. Maybe all of us. It was talking, he whispered. It said my name like it knew it. I didn't answer. Some truths don't need confirmation. They only need containment. We built a makeshift shelter using the half-burnt camo tarps. The light sensors flickered in rhythm with my heartbeat, still syncing to some unseen pattern. I watched the readout, pulse at 48 BPM, slowing like the air around us. Even the jungle seemed to breathe softer, as if mourning. When I checked the black box footage, frame by frame, I caught something new, a silhouette standing behind Sykes before he fired. Not touching, just watching. The outline bent with his movements, perfectly mirrored, like a reflection waiting for him to turn. I saved the file, labeled it Sequence 47B, Human Cost. By dawn, Lopez was stable but unconscious. Sykes sat apart from the others, head in his hands, whispering the same apology over and over. It wanted me to listen. Maybe he had, maybe we all had. The jungle didn't need to kill us to win. It only needed to show us what we were willing to destroy ourselves for. By the time we reached Grid 12 Delta, the jungle had turned to metal. Beneath the roots and vines, shapes began to emerge, angles too straight, too deliberate. Buried panels, rusted steel ribs, fragments of an artificial shell. It wasn't a lab built in the jungle. It was a lab buried by it. We cleared the entrance with thermite charges, melting through the corroded hatch. The stench that rolled out wasn't rot. It was ozone and something chemical, like old anesthesia. Inside, the air was still and heavy, preserved by decades of humidity. My flashlight caught faded hazard signs. Biocontaminant Level 5, Project Harbor. The letters peeled away under my touch, revealing symbols underneath, spirals etched by hand, as if the walls themselves had been rewritten. The corridor sloped downward. Every 20 meters, a decontamination gate hung dead and silent. Power cells long drained, cameras shattered. It felt like walking into a lung that had stopped breathing. We descended slowly, weapons up, each step echoing too loud in the emptiness. Then the power flickered. One by one, the overhead lights stuttered awake, casting long shadows that moved faster than we did. The facility wasn't dead. It was dormant, waiting. My comm spiked with interference again, but this time the static wasn't random. It pulsed in time with our footsteps, syncing perfectly. We reached the central chamber. Rows of glass pods stood in a circle, each one cracked or shattered from the inside. Some still held fragments of what looked like organic material, fibrous, pale, and almost translucent. But in the center of the room, beneath shattered glass, lay a containment cradle. Its restraints were torn apart, twisted outward, not inward. Whatever had been held there didn't escape. It evolved. Lopez, still weak but alert, found a control terminal under the debris. He bypassed the old security layer using the portable uplink. Static filled the room again, followed by a low tone. The monitor flared to life. Video log 43C. On screen, two scientists in hazard suits spoke hurriedly. Specimen 01 regenerates faster than tissue sampling can record. Cognitive responses detected in non-neural areas. Behavior suggests mimicry. Containment no longer viable. Termination order denied by command. The feed cut out, replaced by corrupted audio. But in the flicker, one frame stood clear. A massive form, vaguely humanoid, suspended in fluid, eyes open and aware. Sykes stepped closer to the cradle. "So this is what they took?" he muttered. His voice trembled. "This is what it wants back?" Before I could answer, the facility shuddered. Dust fell from the ceiling. The lights dimmed, then surged brighter than before, and from the corner of the chamber came a whisper, not through comms, not from any speaker, but through the metal itself. "Return it." The word vibrated through my bones. I checked the seismic reader, no tremor, no environmental cause. The sound had weight, like the place itself had spoken. For the first time since the mission began, I understood why the jungle had stayed silent. It wasn't protecting us. It was waiting for us to open the door. The facility trembled, as if the earth itself was rejecting what we'd uncovered. Dust and fragments rained down from the cracked ceiling, and every screen flickered with distorted images, human outlines shifting into something else. My headset buzzed with phantom signals, echoes of voices that didn't belong to our frequency. We stabilized the terminal. What remained of the archived data was fragmented, but enough survived to reveal the truth. The creature we'd been hunting wasn't alien, nor some myth of the jungle. It was human-made, a defense organism, a weapon. Subject A, shadow reflex. According to the logs, it was engineered to adapt faster than threat analysis could process. Light, heat, sound, it could mirror or nullify them all. Its core programming was survival through assimilation. When the test phase ended, the facility went dark. The project was abandoned. But something in the organism refused to die. It learned. The final entry chilled me more than anything else. Subject A demonstrates selective aggression. Attacks only those carrying command insignia. Memory imprint detected. Command hadn't sent us to eliminate an unknown threat. They sent us to erase their mistake. We were expendable. Camouflage for a cover-up. Sykes slammed his rifle butt into a console, the metal ringing like a scream. "They used us," he growled. "They knew this was down here." Lopez just stared at the central cradle, eyes wide. "If this thing was made from us, it remembers." The idea lodged in my mind like shrapnel. The creature wasn't simply killing, it was recognizing. It had the instincts of everything that built it. Predator and soldier, hunter and hunted, a mirror of man's arrogance, sharpened by evolution. I opened my field recorder and began dictating, voice steady despite the chaos around us. Subject A, confirmed man, made origin, engineered for adaptive stealth. Current behavioral pattern implies sentience. Command withheld information to conceal responsibility. Operation objective, compromised by deliberate misdirection. Outside, the jungle seemed to stir again, branches shifting, air vibrating with the low hum of something vast moving through it. The heartbeat monitor from our pack started pulsing on its own, rhythmic and slow. Then it flatlined. In that silence, I understood. We hadn't come to destroy a monster. We'd come to meet our reflection. The cost of creating life built only to kill. The moral inversion was complete. Man had built a god of shadows and now called it the enemy. And somewhere out there, in the dark beyond the lab, that god was listening. By nightfall, the jungle was breathing again, slow, rhythmic, alive in ways we couldn't chart. The rain had stopped, leaving a mist that hung like smoke between the trees. Every sound was amplified. A drop of water, the click of a safety switch, the dull throb of my own pulse in my ears. We had one plan left, if we could call it that. We would hunt the thing that had been hunting us. Sykes moved ahead with a motion sensor rigged to an infrared net. Lopez followed, setting chemical flares every 50 meters. I trailed behind, syncing the heartbeat monitor to ambient frequencies. The air itself seemed to carry a pulse, steady, deliberate, almost human. We'd learned that noise attracted it. Heat drew it closer. So we became ghosts, silent, cold, deliberate. We turned off comms, muted every ping, and let instinct replace orders. I'd stopped thinking like a soldier. Now I was something between man and machine, reacting without command. At 0200 hours, the mist thickened. Thermal readings flattened to zero. The jungle wasn't just quiet, it was listening. Then, a shift. A faint shimmer between two trees. It moved like light bending around bone. I raised my rifle, sighted center mass. but didn't fire. The movement froze. Sykes whispered, "Got eyes?" But his voice was too loud. The shimmer turned toward him. One breath later, the air split. The creature moved, faster than physics should allow, cutting through space like liquid shadow. Sykes fired. The muzzle flash lit up the clearing. Nothing there, just broken air and falling leaves. Lopez triggered the flares. The jungle burned orange and blue, the mist turning into smoke. That's when I saw it clearly, an outline of something that shouldn't exist. Not a body, but a distortion, bending the world around it. Its shape mimicked ours, but smoother, silent, and impossibly fluid. It stopped, facing me. My weapon was useless. Instead, I slowed my breathing, aligning it with the faint echo I could feel through the ground. The creature tilted its head, matching me. The heartbeat monitors synced. One pulse, then two, perfectly aligned. For a moment, everything else disappeared. The team, the jungle, even the sound of rain returning. It was just us, soldier and shadow, creator and creation, two beings designed for war, realizing that survival meant understanding, not annihilation. I lowered my weapon, slowly, deliberately. The creature stepped closer, within arm's reach. The shimmer around it flickered, revealing flashes of texture, skin like wet glass, veins of light, eyes that reflected nothing. Then, it stopped. Its chest expanded once, mimicking breath. I could feel its rhythm slowing to match mine. Silence enveloped us. Finally, it turned. No sound, no aggression. It vanished into the mist, leaving only the faint impression of footsteps dissolving in mud. I stayed there for a long time, motionless. Somewhere deep in the forest, the pulse resumed. Faint, steady, alive. The jungle exhaled, and I knew it was over. Not victory, not defeat, just understanding. When I looked at the recorder, the heartbeat monitor still blinked, one single beat, then flatline. By dawn, the jungle had changed again. Mist clung to the river like memory, heavy and reluctant to lift. The smell of burnt foliage hung in the air, a reminder that fire and silence had both failed to erase what happened here. I walked the perimeter where our camp once stood, but the ground had already reclaimed it. The tripwires were gone, the decoys scattered, the blood soaked deep enough to vanish. When the extraction chopper finally appeared, its blades broke the quiet like a confession. I raised the flare, weak red light fighting through the fog. There were supposed to be 6 of us. Only 2 answered the pickup signal. The pilot didn't ask questions. Neither did we. Some truths travel better in silence. Inside the bird, the comms were dead again. Static filled the headset. No command feed, no confirmation. I checked the data drives, wiped clean. The footage, the thermal logs, everything erased except one fragment, a corrupted file tagged File 13 to Reckon. The timestamp matched the moment the creature disappeared. Sykes stared out the window, eyes unfocused, whispering something about the heartbeat he still heard in his head. Lopez said nothing. He just gripped the strap across his chest like it was the only thing keeping him grounded. I understood. We'd seen something that didn't fit in a report, and men like us weren't trained for that kind of truth. When we reached the base perimeter, protocol took over. Quarantine tents, debrief checklists, decontamination showers that scrubbed skin until it burned. They treated us like potential contagions, not survivors. Maybe that was fair. What we carried wasn't infection, it was proof. They logged our weapons, sealed our gear in black containers marked classified disposal. I slipped one SD card into the inner lining of my vest before handing over the rest. No one noticed. I'd learned from the jungle, what's hidden survives. That night, I watched the facility lights flicker across the tarmac. A storm rolled in from the east, lightning illuminating the tree line, the same jungle that had swallowed everything else. I thought about the creature's silence, how it never struck without reason, how it mirrored us until we became what it was. As the rain started again, I opened the recorder one last time. File 13. Rec blinked on screen but refused to play. Just a black frame, a faint hum, then a single sound, one heartbeat, steady and mechanical. Proof that something, somewhere, was still alive. By the time they called me in, the the report was already written without me. The conference room was windowless, fluorescent, and colder than the jungle had ever been. 3 men in pressed uniforms sat across the table, faces I didn't recognize, badges I wasn't cleared to see. On the screen behind them, the header read, "Mission loss, weather interference." I almost laughed. After everything we'd seen, that's what it came down to, fog and wind. They asked about asset contamination, about optical distortions, and possible wildlife interference. Each phrase carefully sanitized, scrubbed of meaning. I gave them answers just as clean. The truth didn't belong in that room. When they slid the non-disclosure agreement across the table, I read every line. Clause 14 caught my eye. Permanent silence under threat of prosecution. I signed anyway. Silence had already saved me once. The pen moved smoothly. My signature looked calm, almost practiced. They confiscated our field logs, our body cams, even the fragments of my watch that still bore the jungle's mud. I noticed the head of debrief, Colonel Reeves, hesitate before sealing one envelope. There was fear in his hands, not authority. Maybe he'd seen the footage before it vanished. Maybe he knew we were never meant to come back. Outside, the air smelled of jet fuel and rain. Lopez had already been transferred to medical. Sykes was gone without mention. I stood by the chain-link fence, watching cargo planes lift into the gray. Every sound felt distant, muffled by the same static that had followed us home. That night, in my quarters, I took out the hidden SD card. I connected it to a secure laptop, expecting nothing but corrupted data. Instead, a single file appeared, audio only. A low hum, faint static, and beneath it, a heartbeat. Not mine, not human. The same rhythm I'd heard in the jungle, still pulsing through metal and distance. I sent an encrypted copy to a contact I trusted once, a journalist who never stopped asking about missing field scientists. No message, no explanation, just the file. Some truths didn't need my voice to be believed. When I closed the laptop, the hum continued in the walls, steady as breath. The jungle was gone, yet it had followed me here, in the systems, in the silence, in the pulse that refused to stop. The footage surfaced on a Tuesday morning. No press release, no leak credit, just a grainy file uploaded from an untraceable account. I recognized the timestamp before the pixels resolved. It was ours. The jungle flickered in infrared green, men moving through vapor and darkness, the heartbeat tone steady under every frame. Then came the distortion, the shape bending air, swallowing light. By noon, the video was everywhere. News anchors argued about hoaxes and deepfakes. Defense officials denied involvement. Commentators replayed each frame, searching for logic in what refused to fit. The world saw the same jungle that had consumed us, but through glass, it looked almost cinematic, something to react to, not believe in. I watched from a rented room 3 cities away, curtains drawn, phone off. The glow from the laptop screen painted the walls in the same washed-out green. My name wasn't mentioned, but my silence was louder than any denial. That was the trade. They'd control the story, but I'd control the quiet. Online, theories spread faster than truth. Some claimed the creature was extraterrestrial. Others called it a black-budget experiment gone wrong. A few got closer. They spoke of genetic splicing, of something human turned defensive. None of them understood what it felt like to have that pulse echo through your bones. The journalist I'd sent the file to reached out once. Just a single encrypted message. "They're watching traffic. You were right." I didn't reply. Some messages are safer unanswered. I formatted the drive, burned the laptop casing in a drum behind the motel, and watched the plastic curl into nothing. Still, I couldn't escape the sound. Every time the fan kicked on, every time the fridge cycled, there it was, that low thump beneath the noise. The jungle hadn't followed me. It had become me. Each heartbeat was a reminder that the line between hunter and survivor is thinner than command ever admitted. I knew I couldn't outpace the story, only outlast it. The world could argue about evidence and hoaxes. My job was done. What survived wasn't proof, it was the rhythm that refused to fade. When the clip hit 1 million views, I closed the laptop and let the room fall silent. The chaos belonged to them now. The quiet belonged to me. The jungle never really leaves you. It lingers in the pauses between breaths, in the way silence starts to feel alive. Weeks have passed since the footage broke, yet I still wake to the pulse, not from fear, from memory. Every beat feels like a reminder of what we created and what we tried to bury. I've stopped wearing the uniform. It's folded in a steel trunk beside my gear, tags, patches, a single mud-stained glove. They call it retirement. I call it distance. The Army sent one final notice about operational discretion, stamped in red and signed by a man I've never met. I didn't bother replying. Some debts are paid in quiet. Now I live near the edge of a river that doesn't have a name on any map. It's not the Amazon, but the air feels the same. Wet, breathing, old. I keep my equipment running on solar rigs, enough to intercept transmissions, enough to listen. Every few nights I catch static bursts, irregular, rhythmic, not language, not noise. Just that heartbeat again, faint and patient. I've begun tracing the origin of those signals. They're bouncing off satellite relays used by defunct research stations across South America. The metadata points to someone still out there, still studying what we left behind. If they think I've stopped watching, they've mistaken silence for surrender. Sometimes I replay the last entry from my field log. My voice sounds different, measured, almost resigned. I said, "We weren't sent to kill a monster. We were sent to erase a mistake." I didn't understand it then, but I do now. The creature wasn't revenge, it was consequence. Nature's response to arrogance. A shadow born from our reflection. The world will move on, as it always does. They'll build new programs, fund new labs, chase new ghosts. But some ghosts don't fade. They adapt. And when the next distortion appears on someone's feed, when the next mission vanishes without a trace, maybe then they'll remember what the jungle tried to teach us. For now, I keep recording. Frequencies, coordinates, silences. This isn't a mission anymore. It's a vigil. Because the jungle spoke once, and I learned to listen. Some ghosts bleed. Some learn.